Toyota 7 Series with a 4-wide engine. Came in, customer complaint was it starts and it dies. Okay, so report from the field. They were thinking that they're losing ignition or spark. So what they did firsthand was replace the distributor and the spark plug, basically a complete tune-up. That didn't work, so they put back the old ones. They did some repair on the wiring, as you can see this. So when they put back the old one, they didn't time it properly, so we had to time it again. All right, clock it up the way it should be. Now we're back to the original problem, so let's crank it, see what's happening. Starts, and no matter how you raise the RPM, crank it again, and it dies. Okay, so that is the story right now. Are we losing ignition? Just like a no start, there's only 5 things, and it's not going to be timing, not the ignition timing, at least not anymore, because we already fixed the ignition timing. We timed it properly. Next thing we go for is ignition, see if we're losing power to the ignition coil, like what they said, or are we losing fuel? We're hooked up to the power supply for the ignition coil. So we have our test light to the negative. So we key on. All right, so we have power going into that wire. So we're going to crank it, try to start it, and see if we lose power. So if the light goes out, that means we're losing power to that ignition coil, just like the way they thought. Okay, key on. Okay, it did not lose power to the ignition coil, so we have to look somewhere else. All right, so that's automatic, keyed up, but when it was starting and it was running, and even when it died, we did not lose power to our ignition coil, so we have to look somewhere else. The next thing to look is now going to be on our coil right here for the main. So their main solenoid for our fuel. So we key on again. So this coil is only going to get power from the rev switch, and it would only get power to that once you're cranking. So let's see, try the crank. Now it wouldn't start anymore. Okay, so you saw that just before it died, we lost power going into our main solenoid. There you go. So this is the direction we were going to take. We're going to take right now. So basically the engine is dying off because we are losing fuel. Okay, so pulled up the diagram for this truck that we're working on, that the main LPG solenoid is cutting out. So we're looking at this and we can see this is your main solenoid, this is your slow solenoid, right? And this is the one that cuts out. We're losing power. You can see it's being controlled by a relay. The power going to it is controlled by a relay, but the relay is controlled by the TWC ECU, right? So the engine computer, basically. Now, the way that it works is that when you're key on and then cranking, it has a timer. At least that's what I understood from it. It would give a negative to this relay, thereby powering up your main LPG and your slow solenoid. But after the engine is running, the distributor, right, to the igniter is supposed to send a pulsing signal to the TWECU. As long as that pulsing signal is there, then that should be no problem. This relay should always be giving power to this main solenoid. So that's what we're going to be looking at next. So because it's a computer, I always say when you're dealing with a computer, if I don't have the right output, I'm going to look at the input. And right now the input is from that igniter to that computer. So we're going to hook up here and see what we find. So right now I got my red lead, although it's connected to channel A. I'm just using my red lead. Negative black lead on the negative of the battery. We're hooked up to the wire that's supposed to feed the signal to the TWC ECU for the ignition pulses, right? So let's try to run it, and then we'll see from the screen. I'm just going to record this. Okay, let's run this. Okay, then we're going to crank it, see what we get. Okay, so you heard that. It's doing the same thing. Okay, but something is abnormal for sure. Okay, I only see a flat line. There shouldn't be any flat line. There should be a pulsing somewhat that should be happening here. So pause this, go back. This is where we roughly tried to crank and start it. Flat line. So that's just noise. Nothing was happening there. So two possibilities with this one, because I'm always tied into the 0. Either this is an open, or that wire is shorted somewhere to a negative. So that's what we're going to try to do next. Try to see if we have a short to the negative. Okay, and go from there. I got my meter, my positive, my red lead's on the positive of the battery, and my black lead is towards that wire, which is from the igniter inside the distributor. As you can see, I have a straight negative in there, 12.34. Okay, so the problem now is it coming from the igniter, the wiring, or the computer itself? So what we're going to try to do is I'm going to unplug this here. Okay, so that wire is unplugged from the distributor, and the reading is still 12.34. So okay, so now we know that it's not coming from the distributor itself. The igniter is not shorted to the negative. So down to two possibilities, the wiring or the computer. So already dug out the computer. It's right here, and what we're going to try to do is I'm going to try to disconnect this. All right. Okay, so computer's disconnected, and we still have 12.34. So it's not the computer that's shorted. Somewhere along this harness, that signal wire is touching a negative, either a wire or it's touching the body. As you can see, it's a mess in here. I did not do this. Somebody else was working on this before, but we know that the wiring is supposed to be this wire over here. Get that out. Okay, that wire is supposed to be this black with the white tracer. That is supposed to be the wire that leads to that distributor for the ignition signal. So what I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna cut the wire here and then bypass going into that distributor. So basically I am bypassing the short in the wiring. So I'm gonna make my own wire. For now, just put jumper wires, right? Cut those wires from both ends, connect my own wire, and see what happens. Okay, so we found the wire. After the connector with the black with the white tracer, it turns, after this connector, it turns into the black wire. And I see there's already been some repairs that's been done to this prior. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, now I have my black piercing probe. This is my jumper wire, right? And I also have my scope connected there, going into the igniter, the signal from the igniter. So what we're gonna do is we are going to cut the wire right here. So basically we're gonna try to eliminate the short and cut it right here. Okay, cut it right there. So now I am not using the harness that's original to this truck right now. I'm gonna be using that piercing probe to make my own connection, basically bypassing that wire. Okay, so let's run the oscilloscope again. Okay, let's run this again. So we're live. And then we're gonna crank it again and we'll see. Okay, cranking. So that's the signal that I'm waiting for. Okay, that is the signal that I was expecting earlier. And as you can see right now, that's always lit. And it's not cutting out anymore. Okay, so now we know the root of the problem. It's a short in the wire, and I'm thinking that somebody was trying to fix that before, but you know, we can't leave it like this. I'm still gonna recommend a engine harness for this truck, because as you can see, somebody tapped in something here on the starter relay. There's an open wiring there, so it's gonna take too much to go wire per wire. We're just out here trying to diagnose what exactly is the cause of the engine cutting out, and now we know it's a shorted wire within the harness. Still, my recommendation for this truck is to have the engine harness replaced. But as far as this video is concerned, we can call this one at least diagnosed, not fixed yet. I know the root of the problem, so we're gonna leave it at that, and then that's it. Thanks for watching.